Up to about 10 or 12 years ago, our method then was to draw a trench through there with a tool like this and insert steel, scales and wedges. This is the latest method and of course much quicker.
It's 7 o'clock in the morning. The duty pilot from the naval heliport takes a turn round the island to warm his engine, and we go with him. Below, in the harbour, the sleeping ships and submarines lie in the lee of the Chesil Beach, that inexplicable dyke of pebbles that connects Portland to the mainland. As you climb up, you suddenly see the whole island, a jagged piece of limestone rock, 4.5 miles long, jutting out into a resentful sea. From up here, the quarries look like moon craters, especially in the luminous morning sun. The whole island looks torn up and devastated. It lies in the sea like a shipwreck. You can see where the stone has been scooped out and sold and sent away, and how the sea attacks it at the edges and cuts it all to pieces. Until recent times, all Portlanders were members of the same half-dozen families that had survived the harsh rigours of island life since long before the days of Wren and the building of St. Paul's. And they ran the quarries on family lines. But now it's modern and mechanised and efficient. They make reinforced concrete and agricultural lime and other things as well. And there are now less than 100 quarrymen cutting stone because the demand has dropped. But the stone still touches all their lives, and that's what this film is about. An account of what we saw on this particular summer's day on Portland, a day which began in the sky as Walter Trevett and the other quarrymen set off for work.
I was born in the street. With the exception of the war years, I've always lived here. I went in the quarries after leaving school at the age of 14. At the time I worked with my father and three more brothers, also 6 more men. We had a big crew in those days, compared to the crews as we know them today. Of course, in the old days, there was quite a lot of superstition, but most of it is gone now. Probably that's to do with the war, but there is one that remains, and that is the mention of those furry things, or as we call them, underground mutton.
You mustn't mention the correct name, because if you mention the correct name, well then there are some quarrymen now who would prefer to go home than carry on working.
I think in the main, the hostility towards the outsiders, people from the mainland, or Kimberlands as we call them, probably arose from the fact that every extra person on the island constituted another mouth to feed. Quarrying is mainly a family affair. To the best of my knowledge, prior to the war, no one would start working in the quarries unless his father had been a quarryman before him. But this is not necessarily so now. Times are changing. We have recently taken on apprentices whose fathers, to my knowledge, have no connection whatever with our industry. A good knowledge is required in getting, how to get the stone out. Not necessarily in dressing it down, but certainly a good knowledge is required to get it from its natural bed. The joints, where to and how to get the stone out, which way to get it out, where to start. Sometimes it's like a jigsaw puzzle. It's just getting one piece out and the rest will fall out. It's just a matter of knowing which piece.
Come on. That's all right. Ready, I'll give him a bit. Put the other one in there. Yeah. Put the other one there.
In the olden days, it was usual to be paid once a quarter. But over the past few years, we've been paid once per month. The money is issued in bulk form, and it is up to one member in each quarry crew to divide that sum amongst his crew according to the individual day's work. The naming of the natural joints in the quarries would appear to be a foreign language, perhaps to someone coming from the mainland. The natural joints, northeasters, rangers, east and westers, vents, slivers, gullies, tribals, kivels, small sledges, big kivels, wedges, rails, plugs and feathers.
If the joints are tight, they put what we call big wedges in there, and they ream it off, and when it's loose, then they lift it or cut it, whichever they want to.
Scabbling, well, that's like dressing the stone, squaring it up with the kivels and the toy-bills. Just race it down.
I don't think many men would swing this tool all day without the incentive of being piecework. Because a quarryman's earnings largely depends on the sort of quarry he's in. Some quarries are hard to work, some are easier. And of course, the easier a quarry is to work, the more money quarrymen are likely to earn. There is, I would imagine, a big gap between the lowest paid and the highest paid. The stone crusher has had this effect, that for years prior to its installation, most of the overburden was just a waste, thrown away, dumped, left in the quarries. But today, of course, due to the crusher, this has all changed. Most of the overburden today used for crushed stone, agricultural lime, and tar macadam, and of course, precast concrete blocks. One of the biggest problems we face today is the fact that Prior to the war, slabs were required in 9-inch, 12-inch thicknesses, whereas today they need it like wallpaper, right down to 1.5 to 2 inches thick. Nowadays, of course, stone can be cut at a very much faster rate than pre-war, owing to the installation of all latest modern machinery, which goes through stone almost as a knife goes through butter.
It's rather difficult. Everybody can't do it. You must have that creative eye to start with. You want to be able to see, when you start to do the stone, you want to be able to see it finished before you start. And it's quite easily, the only thing you've got to do is to knock away all the stone you don't want.
I can only advise you, if you wish to know anything of the history of Portland, that you should contact Dick Leno. He's an amazing authority on the history of the island, also the shipwrecks that have taken place around the island. How he keeps it in his head is amazing.
And my ancestor as well, lived in Eastern Square. They bought the house from their cousin in 1690, and the same family lived in the same house until 1899, when the house was pulled down. And I myself has been living in the same house where I live now for 62 years. And so you see, we don't shift about much in Portland. It's our home. Inigo Jones, who first helped to make Portland stone famous, a great architect, when he built a banqueting hall in Whitehall for one of the Jameses. And then there followed, of course, as everyone knows, Sir Christopher Wren. And it was the Great Fire of London in 1666 that gave Wren his chance. When the fire started in Puddin Lane, and I read in Samuel Pepys's diary how I climbed to All Hallows barking by the tower this morning, and saw a never to be forgotten sight when all London was in flames. And so it was that it gave Sir Christopher Wren his chance for to build a new London. But of course he was tied down by red tape. If he only had more of his own way, we'd had a far better London than we knew. You know how they started around the edges of the cliffs. There was no other way of obtaining the stone, and then dragged it down to the different piers along the coast. The greatest pier of all was the Great Pier at Churchhope, and how Churchhope got its name, it was the opening by the parish church. When I was in London, some years ago now, in 1924, all Oxford Street and Regent Street was all built new, rebuilt, and there was Portland stone. The island was all around me, and I felt at home. And we think of those buildings in London. They were put there by the sweat of Portland men.
As hard as it is today, quarry work has the real nasty part taken right out of it, owing to all the mechanisation. In the olden days, I think men were old before they were young, and crippled up with hard work, strain, in most cases by the time that they were 40 years of age. We have graduated, of course, from the old hand crane and then on to the steam cranes. Later on, they were converted to electric cranes. On top of that, we have all the mechanization of mechanical navies, or excavators we call them, taking off the overburden. All this is much faster than when done by hand. There is one hand crane remaining, but I believe it's got the mechanization to a degree.
Well, during the winter months, of course, it's one of the roughest and bleakest places you could find anywhere. Terrible. But during the summer months, when we do get this nice fine weather come along with no wind, it's really a pleasant spot to be in.
I have found in this beautiful, hard-working island of Portland a great deal of pleasure in work myself. I have built compositions out of the partly man-made landscape, where the sea is always a neighbor, and where the stone lies about in order and in disorder, as if it was waiting for sculptors to come and carve it. It's a question of preserving the grandeur and simplicity of the shapes. I want to make, if you like, an addition sum from Portland of its forms and colors. Not a record, but an adding up of it. Like a jigsaw puzzle, except that each piece of the jigsaw has to be painted before you fit it in.
I think the Portland quarrymen are very prodigious eaters. Very few have what you might call a real first-class breakfast. But we do have a meal break, of course, at 10 o'clock in the morning, which is rather a large meal. And again, we have the lunch meal from 12:30 to 1:30, when I think most of us eat a good old-fashioned roast Portland dinner. If you saw a real old-fashioned Portland dinner, if you put it on a table in a restaurant, you would probably see 6 chairs drawn up around it. And I think that most quarrymen, I certainly do, enjoy a good meal before retiring for the night.
Well, the fossil wood is very interesting. Now it's exact replica of what it was when it was a tree, but it is now solid stone. And really, to make it more interesting still, it is found that the tree itself has been extinct for millions of years, and that it was a tropical tree. It's very hard for us to believe, but it was the habit in the days when witchcraft predominated for any man wishing to build him a house to always have a cat buried in the wall, as that was a precaution against the wiles of a witch, the cat being the friend of the witch.
And in the old parish registers, it was the same names through the centuries. Pierces, White, Atwells, Cumberns, Stones, Hind, Flew, Edyet, and so on. In the ancient records of the island, we might find William Pierce of Southwell or William Pierce of Weston. They tell where they lived, and everyone knew which William Pierce they were referring to. And it was the same families from generation to generation. So many with the same surnames, and so they used to have nicknames for to know who they were referring to. And the island was famous for its nicknames. Now, there was lawyer, doctor, captain, parson, neither of whom followed the profession of which they were designated. And then all nationalities was represented too. Why, there was many Yanks, a Russian, Billy Frenchy, Jack Chinaman, all Portland families. And so with these, not everyone had a nickname. Many people, some still about today, use their second Christian name as a surname. And then with many instances I could quote with the nicknames. And then there was a mother once looking for her boy, went out on her doorstep and she asked her next door neighbour, "Here, have you seen our coffee dish anywhere?" And the neighbour said, "No, I don't know that I have, but I thought I saw a strange sugar basin in cupboard the other day." And then I've heard the story of how some young men was at the street corner when a gentleman came along, asked for a certain man. And they said, "Oh no, we don't know him, he don't live here." And so the gentleman said, "Well, he's got a nickname," and he said his nickname. And one of the young chaps said, "Why," he said, "that's our father."
Round the earth is round, round she comes round, there he goes, well he goes, round boys, round the earth is round him out, push him out, round he goes, round, there he goes, well he goes, round whole round together, round boys, round him out, there he goes, well he goes, round. 'Tis round, we don't go no further now.
That's as far as he's going.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like he comes, like that. All slack.
would say that in our quarrying industry today, as we know in Portland, the average age of quarrymen, I would estimate to be about 53. As I said before, it's largely a family affair, this working in quarries, and I would say that most quarrymen with sons leaving school today, perhaps they hesitate to advise their son to go into the quarrying industry.